You're listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Paul Young Podcast. And today it's going to be getting to know Paul. I don't know how else to put it. But this is because of a Christmas gift that one of our kids gave us that asked us one question every week that we then answered in a journal type situation. Various questions, and you're going to hear some of them. Then at the end of the year, it was all compiled and you could buy a little book, and I gave a copy to each of my kids because it asked questions that you normally don't talk about. I don't know if you've seen those packets of cards that are sold as sort of a game, but you can sit around and it'll ask you questions. We really like those things. One of our granddaughters especially likes it. So it's a very common occurrence that when we all get together, or some of us get together, that we'll end up in the living room sitting on the couch and chairs going through those questions. Normally we don't follow the rules of the games, but we do like the questions, and the kinds of things that come up are very cool, very wonderful, very tough sometimes, emotional sometimes. So these are some of life stories of mine, and the questions are sort of all over the map. You'll get the idea. Here we go. Was there a story or fairy tale that scared you as a child? Hansel and Gretel. Not a fan. Depending on the version of the story, it can be very gruesome. At the center is a supposedly trustworthy person who turns out to be a witch in disguise. You remember the witch feeds them sweets and says terrible things like, "Stick out your finger, Hansel, so that I can see if you are plump enough to eat." It's horrible. And Gretel even cuts off her own finger to help save her brother. So the moral of the story? People who appear to be kind are witches who want to eat you. Sweets like gingerbread are to make you fat so that you'll be plump enough to eat. Horrible stuff, right? Those you love will help save you by cutting off their fingers. Don't ever get lost. It probably didn't help that I grew up it was called Cannibal Valley, and we had witches in the tribe who were constantly trying to kill me with their potato spears. Probably so that they could eat me. At least that's what I thought. The cannibalism of the tribe wasn't for food. It was for ritualistic, spiritist kinds of paradigm. And also, I never liked gingerbread. I wonder why. If you had to go back in time and start a brand new career, what would it be? Well, this question is full of issues. Almost every major change in our life in the past would have sent us tumbling down a different road. Now, certainly, a different career would have done that. It would have almost been certain that I would not be attempting to write this Storyworth question and that you would be reading it. So on the one hand, the answer is no, I wouldn't do it. Even though I wouldn't know what I had missed out on, the fact is I do know what I did. And because I do, the cost of that imagination would have been irredeemably too great. I kind of call this reverse future tripping. Future tripping is just creating imaginations that don't exist. Reverse future tripping begins with a kind of a question like, if only I had, or what if I had? What if I had married that person instead of this person? If only I had taken that job instead of this job. If only I had, whatever it is, won the lottery. Who knows? What it does, it creates an imaginary storyline, timeline that is perfect, or mostly perfect, and it then judges the timeline you're actually on. So again, you've got imagination doing something that is nefarious. Who knows what I would have ended up in? Now, if this were asked as a thought experiment, which it is, and it would cost me nothing, then yes, I'd do something different than what I did about a lot of things. I would have gotten more education. My goal might have been to create and run an alternative university or a nonprofit that worked on networking nonprofits to solve very specific problems. Or I might have decided to become a defense attorney or a detective. I don't think I would have ever thought of writing as a career choice, but rather an addition to whatever I was doing. I've always liked theater and acting, so that might have been a good option, as well as music. I, at one time, was a very good pianist. It would have been fun to become a really good guitarist. And here's what is amusing about all this. I never had a career at all. My life has been a jumble of strangely unrelated jobs. As far as a career, I shot at nothing and I hit it. So in that sense, any career would have been something I never had. In that sense, the question itself begins with a false assumption, but for the sake of this conversation, I understand its intent. I did take a battery of psychological tests when I was younger that included extensive work with a psychologist, a company called IDAC in Oregon. The result that came out of all that was that I'm not good at sticking to one thing for longer than 5 years. That really doesn't help a career path. At the end of 5 years, I would either go try something else or radically change what I was doing in the first place. Now, being a writer and speaker fits that quite well because everything is changing all the time. Regardless of what has shown up for work, I've responded, I've worked hard, and so in that regard, I think that's a good legacy. So again, the question is a little false to begin with, but I like it. What's one thing you wish you'd known before going to college? There are lots of things I would have liked to have known before going to college. I'm going to choose 3. I wish I had known that you have to be a truth teller no matter what the consequences. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't shade the truth. Don't tell a partial truth. Don't tell an untruth. Everything begins with being a truth teller, which I was not. Lying had been from my childhood a survival skill. You couple that with perfectionism and performance orientation, and you're in deep trouble. But truth telling, that's really at the core of being human. Without that, you cannot truly change your mind, or without that, you cannot experience actually form change. That is the ways that you live. Telling the truth is confession. Changing your mind is repentance. And form change, the way you live, is the transformation that comes through those things. Tell the truth. Second, deal with your past. You either do that now or you're going to do it later. And you may do it after you die, but you're going to deal with it. Waiting will cause so much more damage. God is committed to exposing secrets, and most people have secrets that they keep. And I like to say secrets are snipers. You don't know when they're going to hit you, but they will. This leads directly into the third thing I wish I had known and understood. You cannot do this journey by yourself. You have to include others. You have to take the risk of community. I'm not talking about friends with whom you have something in common, but people to whom you can tell your secrets and hurts and failures. People to whom you can ask, can you help me? God, who has never been alone, could not design us to live alone. We are created for community. Are you handy? What's something you've built that you are proud of? Well, building things, at least with my hands, has not ever been a solitary experience. I don't really have any trade skills myself, so anything I have built has been with the help of others or at their instruction. In my life, I've been a hard worker. Everything that I found to do with my hands, I've done with all my strength. I got that from my dad, I'm pretty sure, and from my mom, actually, and from my grandma. There is, however, a certain joy in building. You get to see immediately a result, change and creation of something that did not exist before it was built. I did help others build or rebuild or repair houses and other buildings. I usually was doing the grunt work, sliding on my back under a house and tacking in asbestos insulation and then itching all the way home, or carrying up a hill concrete-laden sheets of plywood to scrape them off and then oil them. That kind of stuff, grunt work. And at the time I was like 5'7", 5'8". I'm shorter now. It was hard work, but that's kind of, I did it with other people. My favorite thing that I've ever built, and this might not actually qualify for the question, but were sandcastles on the beach with my kids and whoever wanted to join in. They were magnificent and intricate as we could make them. It was magical, and everyone seemed to know what they should be doing individually to make these wonders. It was great. We always built them at low tide, knowing that the ocean would soon change its mind and come hunting. And we dug trenches, multiple trenches as deep and wide as possible, and then large walls to protect the inner castles. While we worked on the trenches and walls, others built and decorated the castle turrets and all that kind of stuff. Some would go hunting for seashells and give the properly decorative look to these things. They would ornament the spires and the inner structures. We all knew what was coming, and as we were working, it slowly happened. The ocean always found us and began eroding our work, but not without a fight, and we really fought. We fought furiously against the rising tide of the invading army. Wave after wave they approached, getting bolder by the minute, sucking the life out of our walls and filling the trenches with mud. Now, at first, our outer walls would push the waves to the side and away. We built them in such a way that they would cause the wave to split and go to the sides. But even for the biggest and highest of these walls, it was only a matter of time. The water gained power, our walls lost theirs. When one wall would collapse, the next one would be exposed, and even though we worked furiously to protect it, it too would go down and disappear beneath the liquid army. Eventually, the castle itself would become a victim of the relentless onslaught of wave after wave of enemy determination and sheer numbers. Finally, there was nothing we could do but stand back and watch as our precious work of art was utterly destroyed and collapsed, only to disappear, becoming one with the invaders. We had done our best and lost. But we were tired and smiling and knew that in this building we had connected our hearts in a task and created a memory of something that would last eternally, something the waves of time would not erase. What were your friends like in high school? Great question. I suppose I can break down my friends into a few categories. There were sports friends, a few of those only because we played the same sport like soccer or badminton, some rugby and maybe floor hockey. There were church friends. I don't remember any guy friends, but a couple girls like the Taft sisters, and only because we did church things together such as youth group. There were school friends, which were also my friends, but there were also some others just because we were in the same classes. Family friends because we were related, and then there were 3 really friends. Also I went to school with. There was one exception to the school friends group, and that's Lori Thane. Her and I had been friends over the years. Lori has a withered arm, and I had a withered heart. And we were both good athletes, but she was much better, one of the best basketball players in the province of British Columbia. We were both musicians, wannabe at least, and she's very much still a musician. Why she liked me? I have no idea, but we are friends to this day. We didn't interact a whole lot in high school, but since then, quite a bit. Among my family friends, there was especially Aunt Ruby's son, Toddy, Charles, and Rita, my second cousin on my mom's side. I think Rita was the first girl I ever kissed, somewhere around 11, and did it for a picture. Somebody wanted a picture and said, "Kiss," or something like that. She and I had a love for comics, and we would spend entire days reading through them, mostly at her house. Rita went on to be a player on the Canadian national field hockey team, and after that an official. She also loved golf and curling, the sport curling, and she fell asleep. She died from ovarian cancer at 56. Toddy and I, when we were pre-teens, created a local newspaper in Victoria, BC. Mostly Toddy did that, and we sold it door to door. His dad, John, taught me how to play chess, and Toddy's mom, Ruby, who went by Tess, for I don't know why, was one of my favorite people in the world. She snuck me to my first movie, was The King and I with Yul Brynner, that musical. I was a bit terrified I was going to go to hell, but at least I'd go there with Tess. That was the thought. Sadly, Toddy and his dad and his sister really struggled with some mental disabilities, and so they struggled to the point where they gave their lives to God. One of the things that is such a precious memory to me is that I was the only person that Jennifer would let hug her. The 3 friends, the high school friends, were Morris Johnson, David Lewis, and Hans Turtletop. All 3, as much as I remember, had no siblings. If there was a nerdy group, it was us. I met Hans first in grade 7 at Cassie Hall Elementary, same with Lori Thane, and David and Morris in grade 9 and junior high. Hans is the extrovert of our group. David and especially Morris were introverts, and I am an introvert with an extrovert communication style. But looking back, we were all smart, and except for Morris, funny. Morris was a very serious kind of guy. They didn't care that my dad was a preacher. I wrote that I didn't try to convert them. Not exactly. I did try to scare the hell into them because I loved them. I tried to convince them to come to Jesus before the rapture. So there was some of that. My friendship with Morris was separate from mine with Hans and David, but of all of us, he was probably the smartest. At 16, he was a chess grandmaster, and he would win tournaments, even playing as many as 20 players at the same time and beating them all. Morris lived close to me, just down the gully near our house, and his family was poor, kind of like ours, but that was never a topic of conversation. Mine was a little better off, but still poor. Morris was a loner and a bit of a stoner. But we liked each other, even though we didn't talk much. I don't know where he is now, but rumor is that he has become a follower of Jesus. David was brilliant with a nasty wit. A little overweight, and maybe his humor was a bit of a defense mechanism, Frankly, we were all sarcastic and creative, not a good combination. David's home in his sanctuary up in the attic, we would play Risk for hours and hours. He also had real battles all worked out, complete with toy battalions and commanders and proper weapons for whatever era he was enthralled with at the time. And he would tell us about all of these wars for hours. And even if Hans and I learned nothing, it was worth the time simply listening to David. Hans and I shared a lot of classes and did sports together, and sometimes I would spend nights at his home, out of town with his German grandma. Actually, I think it was his German mom. She fed us, put us in a down bed, and I've got great memories of great sleep, especially in the winter when the temperature was near zero and the heat fireplace was turned off. Hans and I, we would do these winter car rallies, races through the mountains, and it wasn't for speed, it was for timing. And so it would say you have to get to this next checkpoint as close to this time as possible. We never won, but we got close. But we laughed and laughed and laughed. The three of us, we pulled pranks. We wrote and acted in plays. We hung out together. We cheated on cards at school and beat everybody. I think mostly because no one else would have us around, we hung out together. Often during lunch, it was whist. That was the card game, and rarely we lost. We never did talk about anything that deep, not about our problems or what was happening in our homes or our losses, but we sort of saved each other during those years, and for us that was enough. As far as I know, David and Hans have become teachers. I know Hans married and has at least one child. I don't know about David. My memories of these boys is very fond, and they will forever each and together hold a sacred space in my heart. And one day we'll catch up. All right, we'll do a few more of these. Outside of class, what were you involved with in college? Well, there's quite a difference between outside of class and outside of college, so I'm going with the first. I'm going to answer with respect to the 3 years of college in Canada and not to the 1 year in college in Portland. So lots. Probably too much in some ways, but in retrospect, all of it was helpful and all of it was formative. I read books. I went to movies unrelated to class studies. I was involved in school politics. I was even junior class president. For the life of me, I have no idea why, except perhaps to win approval and affection. I was involved in sports, flag football. I only made it to the hospital one time. Competitive badminton, I actually started that for the school. Competitive volleyball, I was the equivalent of a libero. It's because I was shortest. I was closer to the ground, right? And I did some others, including curling, the sport, but not hockey. Everything's too hard in hockey. The boards are too hard, the sticks are too hard, the ice is too hard, the puck's too hard, the people are too hard, and I had already lost one tooth on ice anyway. I worked. This is funny. I go to a conservative Bible school, but I had a job as a rock and roll disc jockey at the largest radio station in the province, but also did gratis work at the school to help pay my way. I went on missions trips. The Philippines. I spent a summer at Fellowship House in Washington, D.C. and hung out with sojourners. I made friends with the international students at school, and I usually spent Christmas with them rather than go home. Their food was better anyway. I learned to play the guitar, began writing songs, sang in the choir, became the late-night counselor. This meant that I listened often to girls talking about their boyfriend problems, girls that I wished liked me like that. I struggle with my faith. I struggle with myself. I would go to walks in the middle of the night on the prairies and scream my frustration into the howling wind or the sound of a night train. And then I'd gather it all back up together and go back and perform. So what did I do outside of class? Lots. Thinking about those 3 years in Bible school in Canada, I'm very grateful and I'm very sad. Growing up is just hard sometimes. What are my favorite songs? My favorite songs are those that are honest and human and touches my emotions and thoughts. For example, Ed Sheeran's song Supermarket Flowers, which he wrote about the death of his mum. Or Bruce Coburn's song Call It Went Down to the Water, which is about the death of a close friend, a professional diver who drowned in the ocean. The Beatles song Nowhere Man, about the lostness experienced by so many people. Or She Misses Him, sung by Tim Rushlow, about the absence created by dementia in the very presence of the one loved. Or Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven, about the staggering loss of a child. There's a theme here that I'm not particularly liking. But there's also joy songs, right? Like James Taylor's Shower the People You Love with Love, or Carole King's You Got a Friend. Lots of other ones. Our humanness is so much grander and powerful and expansive than any one genre or style or about any one segment of our lives. Some songs make me want to dance, admittedly awkwardly, but truly. Others allow the presence of tears and opens inner doors to memories and hidden fury and people. And it can happen without lyrics. I love words, and so lyrics are important to me. But there are some times in the presence of sounds that I am deeply touched, that are honest and human and grants me space to hear and feel depths that I would not otherwise. I don't have a great affinity for noisy music, not much for electronica, and certainly not for constant repetition. But others I do. I love minor keys, a well-placed cello or violin or flute of one kind or another. I love story songs and tight creative harmonies and music with skilled artists and any sort of song sung by a child. I love songs that surprise me, make me stop and listen again and then again, but not so many times they become normalized, like a too often eaten dessert. I like angry songs, wistful songs, longing songs, love songs, clever songs, and, well, you get the idea. Music is so very special to me. And I also like silence inside of a song, or between songs, or because of songs. For me, all of these songs are worship songs, human worshiping songs expressing our longing, our love for God, and wonder, and touch, and joy, and fury. I know an honest, human, and touching song when I hear it. I'm so deeply grateful for music, for song. What is one of the strangest things you've ever eaten? Well, strange as defined by whom? I've eaten some things that in the West, that is America and Canada, Europe, etc., would be considered quite strange. But there's also many kinds of European cultures that eat some strange things too. But at the time, it was normal to me to eat these strange things, and they weren't strange at all. So growing up in the highlands of West Papua, New Guinea, I've eaten all sorts of bugs and snakes and rodents, including tree and ground rats and mice and bats and birds and big chunks of pork fat and cicadas, really good roasted. And they were all cooked, just so you know. I like gizzards and hearts and tongue and gristle and marrow. So are those things strange? Or am I strange? Boiled chicken eggs are strange if you think about it, but I haven't eaten balut, which is in the Philippines considered a snack. Balut are chicken eggs boiled at different ages of gestation, some right before the chick hatches. Strange enough, it doesn't appeal to me. Like, not at all. I've never eaten durian, which is a very stinky fruit. In fact, it smells like a rotting garbage dump. If you go to the Philippines or places, it's outlawed in hotels. Couldn't get it past my nose. I've eaten raw things. I mean, sushi's a raw thing, right? But I haven't eaten anything that was still alive. So it's probably easier for you to answer for me. Do you think Paul has eaten anything strange? Last question. What simple pleasures of life do you truly enjoy? And I have a lot of these, like watching a show with Kim. It took some time to find some that we both like, and these are mostly detective, crime, mystery sorts. Then I watch sci-fi and she-her drama, love stories, and old stories, the black and whites. I love a good cup of tea, especially loose leaf teas that I can mix and experiment with. I've never been a coffee drinker. My whole family were coffee drinkers, but a good cup of tea in the morning, love it. I love a hard rain downpour, especially if I'm under a tin roof. When we built our current house, which Kim designed, she did, put a tin roof over the landing outside my office. And when there's a significant rain, I open up my office door, or I go and sit in a chair on this little balcony, and I get lost. I like yummy food, especially with friends and family. Ethnic food is probably my favorite, but I like food. There are few foods that I don't like, some of it just out of spite, but generally I love food. Vanilla ice cream? I like vanilla ice cream. I love grandchildren. The younger ones who see you and come running, older ones too, but they don't do that as often. A good conversation with the older one is more than fine, good, or okay. I like those conversations. Actually, a good conversation with anyone works. Reading a book, especially if it's well written, I can get lost in a good book. Laughing. I love laughing. Nothing like it. Just Thinking about it makes me laugh. Crying. I like crying. There is nothing like a good cry. And for someone whose emotions were locked away for too long, it's really a gift. I love hugs. There is something powerful and sacramental about a hug, especially for those of us who touch has damaged. I think human beings were made to hug. I love Kim. I love when she reaches over while she is driving just to take my hand. She keeps the other one on the wheel, though. I enjoy when a job is done. I like organizing silverware in the dishwasher by type. Because I like when it's dry. Why doesn't it make sense to everybody? I like just to reach in and grab a whole section of silverware and put it in the drawer. I like working on a puzzle. I like helping someone, especially a friend or a family member. I like zapping a fly or a no-see-um or some kind of little biting insect. And I like a well-struck golf ball, which I usually have to watch. I don't participate in it very often. A good, well-struck golf ball that doesn't slice. I love life. I'm an optimist. I love my relationship with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I love seeing things that I haven't seen before. I love creation. I love the beauty of something that shows up on a walk. I love a walk. I love joy. I love gratitude, and my life is full of it. I love being present. I love that I exist, and that you do too.